Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast with your hosts, Reese Downing and Jacob Workman.
What's up, everyone? Another NCAA edition of the Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast. Joining me, as always, Reese. What is going on?
What's going on, man?
Just a few weeks left. We've actually had real football. Well, we had a preseason game played. I mean, I call it real football. It's close enough. It didn't even get to finish, unfortunately, because of weather. But real football was on TV, which means we're close.
Yeah, so I mean, saw a couple decent plays out of that game. This whole new kickoff is goofy as hell looking. It's going to take a minute to get used to, but I understand the point behind it, and I think there's going to be probably an increase, I think, in some pretty big returns this year, because if you break past that line, there's not going to be anybody to stop you besides the kicker. So that's going to be.
Yeah, I just wonder if teams are just going to keep kicking it through the end zone for the touchback. I mean, the 30. I think if they would have been right, if they would have kept it at the 35 for the penalty, but when they moved it back to the 30, I'm not sure that that's enough of a penalty to risk the return. So
yeah, I agree.
We'll see what happens as the year goes on, though, and I'm sure we'll be talking quite a bit more about that in the NFL episodes, which there is one of those weekly also. So make sure you're tuning into that and subscribing, sharing with everyone. Today, so we've already gone through all of our conference previews. We've done the group of 5. We've done Notre Dame. So this is just kind of more of we've got a few weeks left. So you're going to get our best NCAA bets. A lot of these we actually did talk about as we went through our conference previews. There's a few added in and some very high odd ones that we're throwing out there just for fun because there's a lot of value in these. And then next week, we will be back with our conference champions and then our 12-team playoff prediction to start the year. After that, it's week 0, and we're picking games. So the season's quickly coming. Reese, is there anything before we kick off our best bet episode you'd like to throw in for the college season?
No, I don't think so. I'm just ready to start picking games against the spread, and let's get this rolling. I'm excited.
I know these previews have taken a toll on us. There's a lot of them.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of work that goes into this.
Yeah,
for sure. But
all right, so to kick off our best future bet episode, we're gonna throw it to Reese. Reese, number 1 on the list. What is the first favorite future bet that you have?
So my favorite first future bet is Liberty playoff odds at plus 470. We talked about this last week in the group of 5 discussions, but looking at Liberty's schedule, I think they have a pretty clear path to go undefeated in the regular season. And if that happens, they're definitely going to be in the playoffs. So my first selection here is Liberty playoff odds at plus 470.
Yeah, I like that. And we gave out one last week too, where it was, I think it was Ohio State to go undefeated and then Liberty and Boise to both win 10 games. If you go back and listen to that episode last week, if you guys are interested in that one was a very high odd one too. That was really good. My first pick I have, and this was in the ACC preview. It was Vatek over 8.5 wins at plus 124. When we went through the schedule prediction on the ACC episode, Reese had him finishing at 10-2, and I had him finishing at 11-1. And we deemed 3 games that were 50-50 games. So even if they were to lose all 3 50-50 games, that puts them at 9-3, which is still going to hit the over 8.5.
Yeah, we talked about it last week, and I'm actually going to touch base on this one. This is one of the 2 bets that I think you and I have some overlap on. So, but definitely think that Virginia Tech has a solid shot of going over 8.5 wins this year.
What is your next one?
My second one is Kansas State to win the Big 12 at plus 380. So when we talked about this as well, a lot of this stuff is kind of repeated over previous episodes. But when you look at Kansas State's schedule, there's a lot of reasons to like these odds. They avoid playing Utah and UCF during the regular season, which we talked about being tough teams to play. They get Oklahoma State, Arizona, and Kansas all at home. And their toughest road game is arguably the last game of their regular season when they travel to Iowa State on November 30th. So if Avery Johnson and this backfield can stay healthy, they should have a shot at the Big 12 crown by the end of the year. So my second one here is Kansas State to win the Big 12 at plus 380.
My second one is Rutgers over 6.5 at plus 130. We had them at 8, or I had them at 8-4 when I did the Big 10 preview. I just think their schedule's very favorable. I like what they've brought in. They've got a very experienced offensive line. The running game's going to be solid, and the defense was good. But the schedule's the key to this one. I think it's a very favorable schedule that I think should easily get them over 6.5.
All right, yeah, my third one here. I've got Kansas State and Ole Miss both making college football playoff at plus. I had it at plus 584. That may have changed to plus 470, but we already talked about Kansas State earlier. For Ole Miss, I've had them as my pick for SEC championship and a tight win against Bama. We talked about that on the show. I'm going to stick with it here and have confidence that this is the year that Ole Miss takes that next step. So, plus 470 if both these guys are going to get in.
Yeah, and as we talked about too, Ole Miss is going to be one of the more fun teams to watch this year. Kind of like what I talked about with Oklahoma State. Those are the two teams. Ole Miss and Oklahoma State are the ones that should be there in the end, but they typically screw themselves at some point during the season. So those will be two fun teams to watch as the season goes on. My next one is Ohio State to win the college football playoff at plus 400. We talked about it during the preview. I think they're probably going into the season the best team in college football. And they only got better with what they brought in through the portal. At plus 400, I think it's definitely worth a shot here. I mean, why would you not throw early money down on the team that is a clear-cut favorite? Really, the question we have with Ohio State right now, and what we're going to have to determine pretty fast is the quarterback situation. But so much is good that I think by the time it gets to the college football playoff, they'll have that figured out.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. By that point in time, they should definitely have that all wrapped up. So I agree with you here, and we'll touch base a little bit more on Ohio State here in a second. But the next one I have here, another one that we talked about in one of our earlier episodes, but Florida at the under 4.5 at plus 124. This was my win pick total during the SEC show, but I wanted to revisit it. This has actually gone up 2 points since the show, which isn't much, but it's still worth noting. Just to recap here, Gators play Miami, Sanford, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, UCF, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State in the regular season. We talked about them getting lucky to get Miami, A&M, UCF, Georgia, LSU, and Ole Miss all in the swamp, but every single one of these games is going to be a really tough W. Mississippi State on the road as well. That's not exactly a guaranteed win. So when I look at the schedule, I don't see this team getting to 5 wins without a lot of luck. So I have this as one of my top bets.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about how this one could be determined the very first game when they play Miami. If Miami beats them, neither one of us saw any chance possible for them to hit this over. So this was another one I liked as well. It's not on my list, but it is one of my favorites also. Next, so this one's a 4-team parlay. Ohio State, like we just mentioned, I'm going to throw in Notre Dame, Georgia, and Florida State. All of them to make the college football playoff at plus 455. Ohio State and Notre Dame, I think they should be pretty much shoo-ins to make this playoff. Like I don't really think there's much risk with those two. Georgia, obviously, will have a little bit of questions, but I still think they're going to be too good to be left out of this playoff, even if they happen to get an at-large. And Florida State is kind of the question here. Obviously, it's going to depend a lot on DJU. If DJ can come in and be successful, then I think this should be a fairly easy bet also. At plus 455, that's better odds than Ohio State to win the college football playoff. So another one with pretty good odds that I'm a big fan of here.
Yeah, I like it. The next one that I have here is Luther Burden to win the Heisman at plus 6,500. We don't see wide receivers in the conversation for winning the Heisman all that often, but we did last year with Marvin Harrison Jr. So I think there's a shot for another wide receiver to be in the mix by the end of the year. This is the last year of the Cook-Burden connection. We talked about that already. Mizzou has a pretty favorable schedule, regardless of who they're playing, whether it's tough road games against A&M and Bama. Luther Burden's going to get force-fed the ball all year long, regardless of what team they're playing against. So he's one of my favorite sleeper picks to win the Heisman, especially at plus 6,500.
Yeah, I like that. And he's, clear cut, probably the number one receiver in college football going into the season. He arguably was last year, even with Odunze and Harrison Jr. still there. He's absolutely ridiculous. I like that a lot. And kind of a little teaser for some of my picks. But yeah, we went a little unconventional here because I have 2 picks for Heisman that are not quarterbacks. So if there's ever a year where we might see someone that's not a quarterback win the Heisman, this could be the year. My next one is Oklahoma State to win the Big 12 at plus 800. When we did our conference preview, I had them at 2 conference losses, which should still get them in the conference championship game. They're the most experienced team in college football, like we talked about. And Ollie Gordon coming back. I just really like what this team has to offer. Like we just talked about with Ole Miss, they're kind of the 2 teams that should be there in the end. It's just, will they be there in the end?
Yeah, it's interesting that Utah has the schedule that they have, and Cam Rising's back and everything, but you and I are both picking different teams to win the Big 12. So
I know.
Uh, the next one I have here is one that you already covered. Virginia Tech over 8.5. This is the I like this a lot. The Hokies made a late run in 2023. All 11 starters are returning on offense, 8 starters on defense. They picked up a couple solid transfer guys to help improve some inefficiencies from last year, like stopping the run. And they, again, like we talked about, have a really favorable schedule. So yeah, I love this one as a future bet. So I've got this one as one of the overlap ones at plus 124.
Yeah, and my next one's tying right into that. So go ahead and hit it. I got Vatech to make the college football playoff at 950. In our preview, I had them even possibly going 11-1. So even if they go 11-1 and make the ACC conference championship game and lose to say Florida State or whoever it may be, an 11-1 Vatech, or I guess they would be 11-2 at that point, but still, that's probably at large worthy. So they would still more than likely make the college football playoff at that point. So at plus 950, I think that's a really solid bet. And who's to say that they don't even go into the ACC championship game and win that? So we're both of us are pretty high on Vatech this year. Before we get to the next pick, though, I do want to throw in. So we got a comment from at 79 Hokie. We just wanted to read this because this is something that was interesting to me. It says, guys, no one in Blacksburg says Vatech, VT, Virginia Tech, or the Hokies. No hard feelings, but I thought I would let you know. We are also curious as to why we never hear Jatech for Georgia Tech, which that's also a good point. It is kind of interesting because that is how it's abbreviated, and no one ever does say that. And what's weird, though, is, I mean, obviously, I've never been to Blacksburg. I've never lived there. I watch a hell of a lot of college football, and I hear Vatech all the time. So it's kind of odd that that's something that's not said locally. I was kind of surprised by that. But at 79 Hokie, I apologize because you are going to hear Vatech all season. So if you keep listening, that's what I'm going to call them. So that's write your comments in, though. I appreciate the comments. We love them. We read all of them. So even though some of them are against us, we do still love them. So keep them coming. There's going to be another one read in a little bit that's pretty hilarious also. So at 79 Hokie, keep them coming. And we apologize for saying Vatech, but that's what we're calling them.
Yeah, well, I'll do my, obviously we've already talked about him 3 times and we said Vatech every time. I'm doing my best here to try to remember to say Virginia Tech. It's Vatech. Going on 30 plus years of being trained to say Vatech, you know, as far back as Vic when he had them in national conversations, and you hear a lot of the national broadcasts and they tend to say Vatech too. So we'll do our best to try to remember that.
And what's weird in his comment is I have literally never heard them called VT in my life. So that's got to be a local, like a local only thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Hey, we're all about trying to make it fair for the locals. So we'll do our best to try to make sure we say Virginia Tech is
Reese will do his best.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll leave it at that. All right. So the next one I've got here, horse team SMU at 10 plus wins at plus 220. Rhett Lashley's done a great job with this team in the first 2 years as head coach. He won the AAC last year, which was their first conference title since '84. Obviously they've moved on to the ACC, but they returned 14 starters, including Preston Stone. They finished in the top 10 in the nation in scoring last year, and their schedule is super favorable too. The only top 25 team they have scheduled is Florida State, and it's at home. 4 of their last 5 are also at home. There's a lot to like about this team. So this is one of my favorite bets. SMU 10 plus wins at plus 220.
Yeah, SMU is another sleeper team to potentially make the ACC conference championship game in their first year. I've talked about it before that's one of the games I fear the most on Florida State's schedule as the road trip to the horse team. Very experienced team coming back, and I do like Rhett Lashley. My next pick is Texas A&M to win the SEC at plus 1,200. If you guys would have listened during the SEC preview when I picked this, they were plus 2,100. These odds have gone drastically down since then. I just really like what A&M brings to the table this year. So going to another comment. So this one is from Aggie Far From Home 9642. And this one's a little shot at my hatred for their yell leaders. So this says, everyone outside of A&M likes to say how dumb they think our yell leaders are, but y'all, something I haven't ever said, but y'all try copying your only for eye candy cheerleaders and tell me one is doing their job in its description and the rest are just there for how little they wear and how they move. We might look goofy, but everyone else just kind of has a sad, insulting job. So everyone tune in at midnight for the midnight yell the night before the Notre Dame game. I would love to hear your thoughts on what these people do. Aggie far from home, keep listening. We appreciate it. Obviously, I back your team this year. Jimbo's gone. I will never back the Yell Leaders. I think still that is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life and the worst thing in college football. Reese,
Yeah, at the same time, he's taking a dig at cheerleaders. So if there's any cheerleaders that are listeners that want to respond to him,
I agree. Let's hear from the cheerleaders because I would like to see cheerleaders watch what the Yell Leaders do and then put a comparison out because it's drastically different. I would say cheerleaders are actually athletic. What these Yell Leaders do is far from athletic.
Throwing stones. I love it. All right. Next one I've got here, Jalen Milroe for Heisman. So I wanted to pick a QB here to win the Heisman as well, given the history of the trophy. So I'm going to go with Jalen Milroe here at plus 1,400. He improved drastically as the year went on last year, and now he's playing for Kalen DeBoer in that same offense that put Penix into the Heisman conversation. There's a lot to like about Jalen Milroe, and if this Bama team performs well and is in the top conversations for college football playoff, I think winning records is definitely something that is a weight when it comes to Heisman, as much as it shouldn't be. And we saw that to an extent with Jaden Daniels winning last year. But I really like Jalen Milroe, and I'm really excited to see what he's going to do in this DeBoer offense. So I've got him as my second Heisman pick at plus 1,400.
Yeah, I like Jalen Milroe a lot, and he's definitely going to benefit from DeBoer coming in. Kalen should have had the Heisman winning quarterback last year. I think Penix was the Heisman Trophy winner last year, and I definitely agree with you. I think Milroe could easily come in and in that offense potentially win the Heisman. My next pick is going to be a two-team parlay. Oklahoma State and Florida State both to make the college football playoff at plus 1980. Like, those are great odds for two teams that are both favored to, well, Oklahoma State's probably not the favorite to win the conference, but both high up there to win the conference. I like that bet a lot at plus 1980.
My next pick here, we've already talked about this one, but Ohio State wins college football playoff. They come into 2024 as arguably the most well-rounded talent deep teams in the country. There's not a single opponent that they're going to face this year, if they're all healthy, that I would say the Buckeyes are the underdog. The path's not going to be easy, especially in the playoffs, but I'm confident this team is poised for big things this year. So I'm sharing this with Jake and picking Ohio State winning the college football playoff at plus 400.
Yeah, and my last two are kind of just long shots. They're both high odds plays, but I like them both. Ollie Gordon to win the Heisman. Obviously, if Oklahoma State's going to have the year, I think they're going to have the year. It's all going to be because of Ollie Gordon. Obviously, he had some offseason issues and some terrible decision making, but he's not being suspended. He's playing, and he's going to get the ball a lot. I think he's poised for another ridiculous season at plus 7,500. I really like those odds. The only downside is, like we've talked about before, is he's not a quarterback, but maybe this is the year a quarterback doesn't win it. So Ollie Gordon at plus 7,500 to win the Heisman.
Yep, I like it. Ollie, call an Uber if you need it.
Jesus.
All right. The last one I have here is my favorite. It's the second third highest one in terms of money lines. But this is still my favorite one. So Ohio State, Georgia, Notre Dame, and Liberty all to make the college football playoff. Ohio State, Georgia, Notre Dame all have at least a somewhat favorable schedule to put them in a position to get one of those 12 slots. So if this were a 3-team parlay, we'd be looking at plus 113. But throwing Liberty in here as the kicker, it takes it up to plus 1054. So I picked Liberty making the playoffs as my first bet earlier. So I'm doubling down here for some big money. So I've got Ohio State, Georgia, Notre Dame, and Liberty all making the college football playoff at plus 1054.
And that's a very similar bet to the one I had earlier. Just throw out Florida State and add in Liberty, and you're getting plus 600 more. The other three are the exact same teams. Tune into the go back and listen to the Group of Five preview for our breakdown of the Liberty schedule also. My last pick is Quinshon Judkins to win the Heisman. Obviously, I talked about during the Big Ten preview, he is going to be splitting time with Travion Henderson. But I think Quinshon's going to be a huge addition for Ohio State and what Chip Kelly wants to do with that offense. At plus 10,000, it's kind of a why not. Like, I think this is one of those best player on the best team theories. They have issues at quarterback. We don't know exactly what the quarterback situation is going to look like. And I think Judkins is going to be a stud for this team. So at plus 10,000, I'm just throwing it out there as a high reward, low risk.
Yeah, I'd say definitely low risk, especially looking at what Chip Kelly likes to do. I mean, this team has two really, really dominant running backs And I think they're going to adopt a real ground and pounds for a vast majority of the year here. So I like this pick a lot.
All right. So that is it for our NCAA Future Bet episode. Next week, like I said, we will be back with the conference champions and our first edition of our Big 12, or not Big 12, our 12-team playoff predictions. So that'll be a little fun one to run through. We will each also go through our playoff brackets and eventually give you who we are picking to win the national championship. So it's going to be a fun episode next week. Go through some brackets, and we're almost there. The season's very, very close. So for Reese Downing, I am Jacob Workman. Just like and share, and subscribe, and tune into our NFL episodes also. And we will see you guys soon.
Cheers, guys.